Welcome. I'm Liz Taylor, ocean explorer, naturalist, and entrepreneur.
I'm Sylvia Earle, oceanographer, National Geographic explorer, founder of Mission Blue, and an ocean elder. Thank you, ocean elders, for sponsoring this program.
And this is our show, Dive In, where we host informal and open conversations with the ocean community on topics of wonder and interest. We're glad to be back again and hope everyone has made some time to get outdoors. You can ask questions as we go through the conversation by putting them in the Q&A box, and we'll get through as many as we can later on in the program. And there will be some links in the chat box for you to refer to as well. And before we get underway today, we want to remind everyone that the world
is blue. Never forget it.
So today we're very grateful to have Denise Herzing joining us to talk about her 4 decades of work with wild dolphins
and
counting in the Bahamas and elsewhere. In addition to being the director of the Wild Dolphin Project, she's an affiliate assistant professor at Florida Atlantic University and a Guggenheim Fellow and a fellow of the Explorers Club. Her work has been appeared in National Geographic, BBC Wildlife, the Nature Channel, Discovery, PBS, and many, many more. So
and now
welcome.
She's here with us.
Yes. Welcome, Denise.
Hello, glad to be here.
Ready to dive in?
So Denise is going
I'm always ready to dive in.
Today, Denise is going to have the joy of sharing her screen with her slides as we get on to the conversation. And while she's working on that, we wanted to show a picture of a spotted dolphin that we have direct experience with. Here, gracing the cover of Sylvia's original Sea Change. This is Sandy the dolphin.
It had a habit when you took you out of school. I know it's bad mom. I took you out of
bad
school.
Bad parenting? That's good parenting, actually.
And we went to with you and your sister and your brother. But what I loved most, I think, about that encounter is the way that Sandy the dolphin just couldn't resist your hair.
No, I know.
Just take it between his teeth and just like floss.
Yeah, he was literally like taking on my hair and then flossing it with his teeth. He was a character.
You thought it was your brother.
Yeah, I did. I thought it was my brother, and turned around to give him a sock in the shoulder, and it was this dolphin just sort of like big smile laughing at me. So what?
Like that?
Like that face. So Denise, but what led you to become interested in these guys and studying dolphins?
How could you resist?
I know, right?
I was one of these nerdy kids, and I was just curious about what was going on in animal minds. And I saw, okay, well, people had studied primates and elephants. I thought, well, what about dolphins? And maybe I'll just find a place in the world to plant myself for a few decades and see what I can observe. And no one told me I couldn't do it. So I just kind of worked towards that goal, and here we are.
And figured out how to do it.
Yeah, of course. Well, it's a journey, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, they have big brains, they use tools, they can understand artificial languages. We don't know if they have a language yet, but we're working on that. And they recognize themselves in mirrors. And these are the features that people find fascinating around intelligence, and we're finding more and more, a lot of animals have these features, right? But dolphins, of course, and they live in a strange environment that most people don't have experience with. And so, how does evolution work in that kind of scenario? What drives intelligence in the ocean?
What's that dolphin in the upper right-hand corner doing?
That's he's pushing a sponge, and they use sponges. This is in Shark Bay in Australia, and the group there that studies them, they find that they're protecting their little rostrums, and they dive down, and they dig for these poisonous fish. And so it saves their little rostrums from getting poison. And that's apparently a tool they use to hunt. And it's incredible, right? Like, wow.
Nose glove.
Nose glove.
Maybe they give a loofah scrub after that. I don't know. Yeah, it's pretty cool use of a tool for sure.
Amazing.
Let's see. Yeah, so when I was a student and even now, there's so few places you can observe underwater, right? And so like you see these two dolphins jumping out of the water, you think they're playing, because you're used to seeing them at a marine park or something, but they're actually probably fighting underneath the water and they're leaping to go down and, go head to head with somebody. So we really work under the water with underwater video and sound. That's always been my main tool. And we work pretty non-invasively. We want them to trust us so we can observe their natural life and their behavior. So, yeah, 39 years and counting.
It really is incredible. I mean, you think about, I know we flashed past the slide there of the people studying sort of, primates and elephants, and that the relative ease with which it is, which people are able to study terrestrial mammals, but getting
Yeah.
below the surface is a whole nother level.
You don't have
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
study elephants holding your breath.
Well, not usually.
Yeah, but we're lucky, it's a very cool species to work with. Not only can you see underwater, but they get spots with age, as you see here. And so you can pretty much assess what developmental stage they're in, even if you haven't followed them from the calves, which happens occasionally. We get a little, immigrant dolphins that show up and it's like, oh, you're probably about 4 years old because of your spots. So we track them by their great markings, nicks and notches, as well as spots. So like this dolphin in the background, this is Muggsy. And here in this shot, she's 35 years old. So she's
Wow.
pretty much a full adult. I mean, she could live another, 10 or 20 years also. But you can see the difference. And then the calf kind of looks like a little bottlenose, doesn't have any spots.
Yeah, a little smooth guy.
Yeah, exactly. So let's see. So we work in the northern Bahamas. And it's a archipelago nation. A lot of the land is submerged. Some of it isn't. And let's see. So this is our main area, Little Bahama Bank. And then across the deep water, there's another very large sandbank called Great Bahama Bank.
Mhm.
And it's a pretty nice place to be a dolphin because you can rest in the shallows, you can snack on good things in the sand, and then you can go offshore and feed at night. And we work off a 62-foot catamaran that we got donated in 1992. So it's a working lab. We eat, sleep, do everything on that boat, try to find where the dolphins are and hang out with them. Yeah, and it can still be rough out there, of course, but we work during hurricane season. Oh boy.
Naturally, right?
Water's full.
That's
But
like-
it's actually the calmest because the wind directions, the island gives us some protection with the wind directions in the summer, whereas now this time of year we can't often get across the Gulf Stream because we get north winds and it's pretty nasty. So we primarily work in the summer, although we've poked out there in the winter over the decades, and the dolphins are there, but
Yeah.
it's hard to get field time basically. So
Yeah, it's really tough. When we did the 5-year sustainable seas expeditions with little submersibles down in the Gulf, it was always during the hurricane season when we kind of have the best luck. But
Counterintuitive.
it's counterintuitive, but you'd always get that real nice glassy,
yeah, exactly. Well,
Until-
it's only a problem if there's a hurricane, right? It's hurricane
Exactly.
season.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
Really calm until it's not.
Exactly.
and then, we're lucky we can sex our animals. For those that like the sex shows here, you can see the little mammary slits of the females. So if you can tell your kids how to identify a dolphin, and then the males just have everything hidden in their little slits.
Mhm.
So that's a nice feature. So here's an example of a dolphin with some really obvious spots. So this was Little Gash, and I met her when she didn't have spots, and this little gash up on her dorsal fin, that's what we used to ID her. And then she got a big nick in her fin or tail stalk. And then she get this big spot. I mean, that's pretty obvious, right? Very IDable as she swims. That's literally how we track our animals, through photography and video. We don't tag them. We just observe them and track their spots. So that's pretty handy.
Elephants don't get tagged either, except for acoustic to track them. But you recognize individuals.
Yeah.
Seems,
Yeah.
Why not dolphins? You just have to.
You have to do the work.
And enough time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And let's see.
With fish too, by the way. Gets
That's-
me with the grouper.
Yeah,
the
grouper.
Barracuda.
Yeah.
I think everything can be ID'd, right? You just got to spend the time.
That's for sure. Like every cat, every dog, every horse.
Yep,
Because
exactly.
the
Yeah, and
live.
like this is one individual dolphin over her years, Lava. So you can see how she's changed.
Very
and
speckly there.
yeah, they're pretty dolphins, actually. They're quite gorgeous.
So important to get the long view, to get a baseline to track individuals. I mean, it seems obvious, but not everybody fully appreciates the magnitude of how important that is, and yet how rare it is.
Mm. Well, imagine looking at underwater video, which we'll see hopefully coming up here, and watching behavior and knowing who's who. So
Yeah.
you can make sense of what they're doing. So it's like, oh, that's the mother and that's her calf. And she's disciplining him. Oh, or that's a male chasing a female. He's trying to mate with her. It's all about knowing who's who and what the relationship is to interpret what you're seeing. That's when it's really critical,
The
actually.
moms, the daughters or sons, or
That's right. Grandmoms and yep. So
Aunties.
yeah, so they grow up, the calves, of course, they're tightly bonded and they nurse for 3 to 4 years. So that gives them some good time. I want to get rid of this.
your
Yeah.
colleague Randy Wells has you say here that there's 25% mortality in the first year. The bottlenose dolphins he studies over in the rather polluted waters around Sarasota, he's discovered that there's accumulation of toxins, and that the offspring, especially the firstborn, gets the concentrated dose of whatever toxins the mom has accumulated. So the firstborn is really compromised more than the second offloads. I mean, it's really perverse.
Yeah, I think that's true in beluga whales up north too. It's like the
True.
mother gets to dump the load, but the calf gets it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, I think it's true in a lot of mammals, in the fat tissues, you bioaccumulate chemicals in an animal that doesn't start to reproduce until they're, you know, decade or more old. It has a long time to kind of build up in there.
Yeah.
Females live longer than the males, or apparently so, because maybe in part because they can offload the toxins through the milk, and the males don't have such a mechanism.
Yeah, that's true. They don't, do they?
No. It's grim.
It is a little grim.
It's very grim, very dark, but it's
But
important.
on to some good stuff.
Yeah.
But anyway, so mother calves, of course, the center of society. One of the big things we've found is that females associate by reproductive status. So even if they're good buddies when they're juveniles, as soon as reproduction starts happening, they may choose to start associating with another female that's pregnant or another female that has calves. So this is like Rosemole and Little Gash, who are like good buddies when they were juveniles. And one of them got pregnant first and had her calf and was kind of not around. The other one finally got pregnant, but then they both started synchronizing, and they got back together and their little calves started hanging out. And I mean, it's fascinating how they have to do what they have to do, right? They have to find food and, learn how to be a mom and that sort of thing. But yeah, so we measure this through different techniques to track them. And then there's the wild little juveniles who are troublemakers, teenagers of any species, I guess. And they have these long learning periods. I mean, when they're a calf for 3 to 4 years, they're learning and seeing and they're involved in everything. But once they're juveniles, they're on their own for the most part. And they're learning social signals, appropriate social behavior. It's it's tough sometimes. They have to learn how to be an adult dolphin, and it's not easy always.
No, I can imagine.
Yeah. But here's a very pregnant dolphin. So this is Katie. See that belly looking good, Katie.
Oh, yeah.
Um, so she gave birth to our first third generation dolphin, Kai. And yeah, we've never seen a birth. We've gotten close, but I guess they just still don't want to be around a human when they're giving birth. But
Yeah.
they,
It's horrible.
yeah, I mean, who knows why? But so we track family trees. So this is Blotches, who was Katie's mom up here. Here's Katie, and she's reproduced since. And Kai is still around, and some of her other offspring are still around. So it's really critical to do, how many really survive? Do they reproduce? Do you want to see some video? I have some pretty cool video.
Oh, yeah.
Let's do it.
So this is Little Gash, who you met already, and it's an old video, so it's not the clearest, but Little Gash is on top there with her 2-year-old calf, and the male is upside down trying to get access to her to mate, right? And there's a group of 3 males, which is typical, and they're all vying for Little Gash's attention, and they take turns. They'll come up, get a breath, go back down, and try to mate with her. And what I find really fascinating about this video is that the calf is right there. The calf is hearing everything. He's seeing everything. I mean, he's part of it. He's probably in the way most of the time, but he's exposed to all this at 2 years old. And so this is part of their learning. It's just ongoing because he's with his mom. So it's a lot of social learning, a lot of rules and regulations, but that's really how they really survive is to learn all that stuff.
Yeah.
And the females, if she doesn't want to mate, she'll whack them away. She'll tail slap them and like, you're not my type, go away. So there might be some female choice going on there too,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of
These guys look so spreckled. These are all adult males here.
Yeah, so now this is a coalition of old males, and next to the moms and calves, they're the tightest. They have the highest coefficient of association to hang out. And what we've learned, sorry, I got to get this out of here. Probably go somewhere else. What we've learned over the years is that these are lifelong friends. They just start developing these relationships when they're juveniles, and they stay together no matter what, unless somebody dies or goes missing for some reason. And their job, they patrol the periphery. They'll challenge each other as groups to mate with certain females. So this is a very important group. And one of the things we do is we collect their poop because you can get their DNA. These are my femme fatales, I call my graduate students when they're
They must think that's really weird.
I'm sure they do. They're like, what, really?
They're doing it.
But then like you really want someone's poop and you're swimming behind them. You're like, come on, give it to me. I need your DNA. But it's the only way to find out who the dads are, right? You got to do it. So it turns out that these really old males, they sire the most offspring, even though some of the younger males you might see fighting and vying for things. It's the old guys, they got it down, they've got it down. So they're siring the offspring. So that's kind of cool. I know. And what's also interesting is that the old males, they'll take kind of a secondary strategy. I talked to the researchers in Shark Bay once, and they said, yeah, we see that too. So the old males, they'll develop relationships with the females and help babysit. And then when the female comes into estrus and he's around and he's a friend, and so it's not just being strong and tough. It's like having the quality of tending. Yeah, I know. It's really interesting. So
it's interesting. Usually, I think it's like with the humpback whales. It's usually an aunt, a bigger, older female that comes and kind of helps take care of the calf.
Yeah. Well, they do have different strategies, I guess. But I guess maybe if you're too old to fight, maybe that's what you do. Maybe you lose your rank or something. But anyway, so that's kind of fun. And okay, so one of the really interesting things I never expected to study out there was the fact that there were also bottlenose dolphins out there, right? Living in the same territory.
Yeah.
And they're big bruisers relative to these little spotteds in the background. So Yeah, and so the first time I saw him interact, I thought, oh gosh, this is so unique. I'll never see it again. And it turns out we kept seeing it. So, we study them as much as we can, and they have similar lives, similar calving rates, and they dig in the sand for food like the spotted dolphins do also. But they do all these things together. So they sometimes forage together. There's a bottlenose on that upper left. That's a bottlenose in the back digging in the sand with the spotteds. On the right, you see a female spotted babysitting a young bottlenose.
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
How
Interesting.
would you
And then,
know unless you're there?
right. And you can see, the bottlenose kind of looks like a little spotted, but the proportions of the body are different. The rostrum's a little shorter and that sort of thing, but they're just practicing. And then the males, they have a really interesting kind of dominant relationship. So the bottlenose are so much bigger and they will really dominate, copulate, go after the spotted males. And that just seems to be the dance. It seems to be some kind of ritual or acceptance. And it's often the younger male that's not as experienced. But on the other hand, they form alliances sometimes. So if there's a big shark, if they're fighting, if the two dolphin species are fighting and a big shark or maybe a unknown dolphin comes in the group, they'll stop their fighting, group together and chase that threat away, which is also interesting, right? So they have kind of good neighborhood politics, I guess, in some ways, right?
Is the one down there on the bottom, does he have some injuries going on there?
Yes. Yeah, he had some shark bites, but he survived actually. But yeah, that's, yeah, there's some big sharks out where we work too, tiger sharks and bull sharks and
Those the
yeah.
ones that could threaten the dolphins?
Yeah, well, again, depends on what the dolphin's doing, right? So they'll go after sick animals, obviously, calves. Yeah, they have a fair amount of shark bites, not all fatal. But we don't see the ones that are fatal probably either, right?
Oh,
But yeah, they get hit, they get distracted, like anybody, right? When they're doing stuff, they can make mistakes. But I've seen we had a group of really pregnant female dolphins riding our bow once. And all of a sudden, this huge, I don't know, 18-foot tiger shark came out of nowhere and went after them. And those females fought him off. They were like, not going to have it. Right. So they chased him away and as he's jumping out of the air. And so,
Wow, that's incredible.
yeah, most of the time, I'm sure they're good.
I think that
Um,
the healthy dolphin could outswim
A shark.
most sharks.
Yeah.
Maybe not a mako, but
yeah. They have different strategies, like sometimes if it's like a mom and a calf or a nursery group, they'll drop to the bottom, I guess maybe to protect their bellies and they'll
Mhm.
leave, right? The old males, they'll actively chase them away though, definitely.
I've heard that some dolphins can really punch a shark where a shark is vulnerable in the liver. The sharks have a really big liver
Yeah.
to disable them.
Or just
Well,
make them go away.
yeah, right.
Wow. Yeah. I know orcas do that, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
dolphins as well.
I've heard that especially the bottlenose,
Yeah.
but yeah, maybe the spotteds do it too.
Yeah. Pretty risky for their rostrums, though. I wonder how
Yeah,
that
that
must
sponge
be.
is not going to help.
Unless it made out of lead, right?
Yeah, right.
On the news.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's a pretty nice place to live if you're a dolphin. So that's probably why they're resident, right? They have food all year round. So they, feed off the sandbanks during the day. Let's see. Are you ready? Kind of smell that.
What are they after, Emily?
Use their echolocation clicks to dig in the sand.
They're,
And they're eating they're little razor fish. They're not huge fish, they're just eating. They're like the potato chips, I think. They're like little dolphin snacks or something. And now the bottlenose, they're interesting. Their feeding is quite different. They do a razor buzz, which is an intense echolocation, and then they make this funny sound called trills. Sound like digital trills. I don't know what they are, but anyway, but they'll dig really deep in the sand and they pull out conger eels, these
Oh, wow.
fatty, yummy eels, right? And they'll go I mean, almost halfway to China to dig them out. It's pretty amazing. So they have a different kind of menu than the spotteds do for the most part.
Funny because their rostrum is shorter, as you were saying, but they're bigger animals, so maybe they have more power to really get down in the sand.
Yeah, they just, and we've seen nurse sharks. I don't know if they both have always done it, but we see nurse sharks doing the same thing around the dolphins. It's like, is somebody learning from somebody here, or do you guys all just dig in the sand to pull out your crabs and your eels and your, so it's quite an active little area, lots of stuff
Yeah.
under the sand there.
Under the sand. Yeah, everybody looks at it like a sandy bottom or mud bottom. They're like, oh, there's nothing there. It's
Right.
lifeless.
Right. No, it's a
There's
busy
so
place.
Metropolis,
Yeah, there's so many critters down in all those little holes and
clams and crabs.
everything. Just so much
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. I think the nurse sharks go after crabs, I think mostly. Yeah, they're chowing down. But I've seen the bottlenose go upside down under like coral ledges and go after lobster. It's like,
Wow.
Oh,
I
That's
know. That's brave, huh? Yeah, I know. But
it's like monk seals in Hawaii dive fairly deep, and their prey, their lunch turns out to be lobsters.
oh, okay, well, guess it's worth going after, huh? It's like-
These are all animals that actually, kind of need lobster. It's not sort of a luxury dinner,
Yeah,
Right.
everyday groceries.
everyday groceries for these.
Eat less lobster.
Yeah.
And I had a graduate student who actually looked at the different species that we see them eat during the day when it's visible, of course. So they have, some overlap in their diet, but the Stenella frontalis, the spotted dolphins, they eat the smaller ones. They'll eat ballyhoo. Flounder is a fish that the young animals will learn to eat first because they're easy catches on the sandy bottom. And then
Have you seen them play with their food?
Sometimes
Pufferfish?
they play with filefish a lot. They'll terrorize the filefish. We haven't seen pufferfish being played with. I mean, they're around, of course. Filefish, they love to terrorize, and you feel bad for the fish. You're like, oh my God, they're
already.
And then sometimes the filefish or whatever fish they're chasing, they'll hide, around us. And the dolphins are like, you want to get after that fish, and you're like, okay, have it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Poor fish is looking for cover, and there's not
Yeah.
much. But yeah, but they have to work hard for some of the fish, like the what's the one? The one of the types of the lizard fish.
Oh yeah.
They can really hide from the dolphins. They dart around, and we'll be watching from the surface, filming them, and we see where the fish is, and it's gone behind the dolphins, and they miss it, and you're like, it's over there. But as soon as it moves, they pick it up, and that's a real hard one to catch. Actually, they have to learn about that one. But luckily, they have a pretty diverse diet during the day, and then you have to wonder. So, like, do moms actually teach calves how to fish? Because that's a very specific definition, right? Teaching, right? And so I had a graduate student who did this pretty cool study. So she measured how long the mothers would chase a fish when the calf wasn't around, and how long they would chase the fish if the calf was around. And it was really striking how long the mothers would chase and show the calf how to catch a fish, versus they could do it in 5 seconds, but the calf's around. It's like, okay, it's almost like a cat and mouse game with a mother cat, right? Like, so that's pretty cool to know. You just see really there's an investment there, parental investment by the mom to show the young one.
Very cool.
And then they go at night, not all the time, or we don't know exactly all the time, but they go off the deep water edge, which drops pretty quickly into deep water, and they feed along that edge during the night and nocturnally. So they're out there, and we go out and try to document that as much as can, but they're going after squid and flying fish, right? So those are the ones that they're going after at night. And we see all ages out there. We see young calves out there as well. Learning, hearing, seeing what's going on. So this is probably part of their main feeding, we suspect, with the nice fatty flying fish in the.
Yeah.
The twilight zone of fish that migrate from deep water that come up at night closer to the surface and serve as a source of groceries of things like lanternfish and hatchetfish and squid and jellies and a whole host of creatures.
Yeah.
And crustaceans, of course, variations on the theme of little shrimps. That
Yeah, it's a pretty cool place.
in the deep water, that's likely a great attraction.
How deep do these guys typically go? Do you know or have some
Well,
do that?
usually in this scenario at night, we find them at about 800 feet.
Wow.
But we don't know if they
It's
dive that deep.
in the range of these.
Yeah, but you can see them go down 100+ feet easily, and
It's a
but
long
yeah,
way to go on a breath.
yeah, I know.
Longer than
And
I
the-
can go on a breath. For
Yeah,
sure.
right.
Man, I'd love to take a submersible down there sometime. That would be actually really cool to watch them at night and see how deep
Yeah,
they
but
go.
we'll try to arrange that for you.
Yeah, would you please? That would be fascinating, honestly. And they do it all night. So there's this north current that goes along the edge of the sandbank. And we go out there in our boat, we turn off the engine and we just drift, and they're drifting, and hopefully we run into them feeding. And we've gone all night a few times to see if they feed all night. And that's what they do. It's almost like they're spinner dolphins. They go off and feed all night and they come back to rest, in this case on the shallow sandbank. So it's plentiful food out there at night.
When do they sleep?
Or do they sleep? Well, they nap a lot during the day, and as you know, they don't really sleep. They switch hemispheres and they rest, right? They go into kind of meditative brain theta waves, apparently. And you can see it. They'll be like just kind of during the day on the shallow water, their eyes are kind of closed, they're just kind of hovering, and as soon as you huh?
Like airplane sleep, right?
Yeah, almost. And as soon as there's a noise, they go, "Whoa, what's that?"
Listening to a boring lecture.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's a busy life, it's a busy life, but the sandbanks are fairly safe. So that's their safe zone, I guess, right? However, a few winters ago, interestingly, we got reports from somebody over there who witnessed a great white shark chasing them
Ooh.
on the sandbank during the day. I was like, whoa, okay, that's different.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe everybody's just hungry. Not sure.
Yeah. Really hungry, maybe,
Yeah.
Opportunistic.
Yeah, exactly. But as you guys, you're in the water all the time. Sylvia, you're the miss her deepness, right? So they have these senses that we forget, right? They're great acousticians, but they have pretty good vision, and they use a sound a lot, even for tactile, right? And they don't have taste, but they have touch, which is great. So they don't have smell, sorry, they have taste, but they have touch, and they can touch each other with sound, right? So they can buzz each other and feel it, tickle each other or hurt each other, whatever it is. So yeah, when you're in, as you have to immerse yourself in the environment to really understand what the animal's doing. I mean, and still then we don't have all the senses, right? We can't hear high frequencies. We could have our little tape recorders in the water and record them, but we don't hear them, or we don't sense the same thing. But it's important, it's important. I always tell my students that it's important to immerse yourself to try to understand the tides and the currents, just feel it, and just get a sense for what's going on. But over the years, we've correlated a few things. We've got little signature whistles dolphins do. It's like their name, or it's unique to an individual. Those aren't ducks, those are dolphins, and those are burst pulse sounds, which are close proximity kind of fighting sounds, basically. And then they have their echolocation for digging under the sand. And then the other thing they do with their clicks is they squash them together and they make buzzes. They're really intense clicking. And they use this for courtship, for discipline, for chasing sharks away, actually. So we know these kind of basic things about their sound and behavior. They still use the same kinds of sounds for different things. They synchronize their sounds. Sounds like a football huddle, doesn't it?
It does. It kind of looks like the little huddle.
It is. It's like, go team, go.
It's really cool.
So, but the dilemma we're faced with, so you're with a group of dolphins, they're making sound, you can see them opening their mouths, bubbles, right? This is kind of a head-to-head group display.
What's going on?
What's going on, and how in the heck do you know who's making the sound? So these are big, I think I'm gonna skip that one. These are big things that we don't know how to deal with, So the big things are they're making sounds above our hearing range, right? So you have to have equipment. So this is an example of a spectrogram. And on the lower left, that narrow band is human hearing range, right? Those are little whistles that you just heard. But the whole spectrogram is up to 110 kilohertz, way above our hearing range. And so you start seeing harmonics, sometimes up to 100 kilohertz.
Wow.
You see places where you wouldn't even know there's a sound if you're only recording in low frequencies. So it would be like nothing except they're making sound, right? So, now we have the tools to do high frequency on a regular basis, so we can record. Like sometimes it's so funny. Sometimes I'll see, typically we'll see them, if they're fighting, they're squawking and they're really loud. And sometimes we see them fighting and you don't hear anything and you're like, are you quiet? Or are you just making high frequency sounds? You don't know until you look at the data, right? But it's like, okay, that's odd. Are you hiding from somebody? You don't want anybody to know you're here and you're fighting without the sound. I mean, it's really crazy.
Yeah.
Do that sometimes. And the other big thing that we are really still challenged with is knowing who's vocalizing, right? So you get that clump of dolphins fighting and squawking. And so we've been working really hard for quite a few years now with a colleague in Singapore, Matthias Hoffman-Kunt, and he's figured out a system to triangulate what dolphin is making a sound so we can start looking at dolphin conversations, right? Who's making what? And it's pretty cool because, let's see, because when you process these data, the site is a special program, blah, 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 and it puts on the video now a marker for who's making what kind of sound. So here are two bottlenose dolphins and the red squares are echolocation clicks. So if you're watching the video, you can see it moving and who's making what sound. This is an example with spotteds where now you've got stars, which are whistles or burst pulse sounds. So it gives us a whole new tool of saying, oh, who's making what sound, like who's fighting with who and who's making the sound. So huge issue forever for anybody studying dolphin communication.
Absolutely.
Remember when Peter Tyack, using captive dolphins, attached an adhesive light to the melon of bottlenose dolphins so that when they vocalized, the light would go on.
Yeah.
So but you can't do that readily with wild dolphins.
You're a little tricky.
Yeah,
They wouldn't like it. I can guarantee that.
We stick the light on your dome, and
Yeah.
It bells and whistles.
A real breakthrough being able to identify, because it's tricky when you're underwater to know which direction the sound is coming from. I mean, it's tricky sometimes in the
In the air.
land.
Yeah.
But
But like, don't you want to know, like, this group of males, is one male the one that's making all the sounds to chase away somebody else, or is it the group? I mean, basic questions. But and you can speculate, kind of think this is what's going on, but you don't know. You really can't tell. And they don't always, have bubbles coming out and that sort of thing. So
they don't open their mouth the way humans tend to do when they speak.
That's right. Oh yeah, and we were talking about bubble rings, right?
Oh yeah, the bubble ring question. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, when they're making bubble rings, it's a visual signal, right? Maybe a little bit of acoustic, but certainly a visual signal to other dolphins to stay away, I'm pissed off. You might not want to come near me, that sort of thing.
Humpback whales express themselves with big bursts of bubbles sometimes.
Mhm.
Apparently, a gesture of defiance, or I don't know. Who knows? I'm not a humpback whale. Wish I were.
Makes sense though. Well, it's also a physical, just, been swimming hard and chasing you, whatever,
Yeah,
tired of it.
and they blow
Yeah.
the nets as well.
It's true.
Yeah.
The idea that they can actually make what looks like a perfect smoke ring, but it's a ring of air, and divers can do it. I can do it sometimes.
That's impressive, Sylvia. Okay.
Yeah, it
That's-
is. Lay back and try to like blow those bubbles, but we might inadvertently be kind of insulting the dolphins in the area.
I had no idea.
Well, it depends on who the dolphin is, though. Like I remember JoJo down at Turks and Caicos, Dean Burnell, who was his famous buddy. Dean could do it with him, and JoJo would watch him, and so they knew it wasn't an aggressive thing. I think in that kind of scenario, and maybe if you know the dolphin, it's different. But yeah, I wouldn't normally go out and try it with a group of dolphins where we are. So
No.
slapped around or something.
That's right. Like, how dare you? No.
Yeah, exactly. What did I do? What did I do? But let's see. So just one other big thing. So we really want to know if dolphins and maybe other species have anything akin to language, right? Like what's going on in their brain, and would it make sense for animals to have these complicated communication systems to pass on information, past, present, future, that sort of thing? And a signature whistle, because it's the name of a dolphin, it's unique to a name. We consider that a referential signal. It's referring to someone, in this case, a dolphin, right? Graded signals like the burst pulses seem to be more about communicating motivation or emotion. They're graded over time. So these are still the big questions in animal communication. And we know some of the terrestrial species really well. Vervet monkeys have different alarm calls for different predators, right? Prairie dogs, fascinating
Yeah.
work by Kon Slobodchikov, looking at alarm calls, also depicting different predators, right? And so we know dolphin signature whistles, they might not be alarm calls, but they are labeling something, right? And so you can imagine it'd be pretty handy if you were a dolphin and you could tell everybody what kind of shark you just saw, right?
Yeah. So the great white or the hammerhead,
Yeah, exactly. Or a nurse shark,
or
So,
coming in,
yeah. So, it makes sense that these systems probably have evolved. And, when we're asking these things, it's like, well, here's some human talk. Here's some prairie dog talk. It's kind of quiet here. I'm not sure. There they are.
I see the dolphin talk.
And then there's little dolphins, right?
Wow.
Wow.
So
Okay.
structurally, human phonemes kind of look like these other sounds. We just don't have the Rosetta Stone, right? We just don't know what's going on with that. And there are a lot of different ways to look at sound. We can look at it visually like we've done forever, looking at these are 4 different signature whistles, and you and I can see the difference, right? You imagine dolphins can too, right? There are neural nets now that can look at how well a computer can tell the difference between a red whistle and a green whistle, and then we see how far apart they are. People have used information theory to look at complexities of vocal repertoires relative to human languages, for example. But what's happening now all over, and we're not the only ones, but people are using AI, machine learning, to help us not only mine data, but look at things like do parts of a whistle recombine like human phonemes recombine? That's a powerful thing if you've got that. So we use machine learning now to help us mine our data so we can pull out sound types that are harder for us to pull out visually and see if there's sequences of sound, right? A is followed by L, is followed by E, that kind of thing. And that the big prize is something called alignment learning. This is used a lot in genetics, where you're seeing if there are rules or structure within the language, right? So, you know, the rule here, for example, would be A is followed by either B or C, followed by A, followed by anything, followed by A, blah, blah, blah. So like in any language, you have structure and rule. And these tools are amazing. And I mean, they're not as simple as they sometimes sound and magic, but they're very powerful to use. We've been actually using a lot of that these days to really start looking at what can we find and what'll, and then maybe interpret it using the video and playback.
It's very cool. Well,
Yeah.
we have a little over a handful of questions in the stacking up in our Q&A.
Yeah, let's go for it.
We still have a little bit of time.
Yeah, we do.
I want to see the rest.
I know you want to see the rest.
There's a fair amount more, but I don't know if we'll get through it all.
Yeah, but you want to take a few questions and see how our time goes?
Sure. Or I could just briefly talk about one more thing and then we'll take some questions.
Okay,
Let's do that.
do that. All
So,
right.
So a lot of the ways we've explored animal minds is interactively. Irene Pepperberg, of course, is famous for her work with Alex the parrot. Now, keep in mind, her work is a little different from other species because parrots can mimic human words, right?
Right.
So that was an immediate advantage in some ways. But if you're dealing with species like great apes or dolphins, you have to create you have to bridge the gap. So with great apes, they had developed keyboards, and the same with dolphins. There have been some pretty cool keyboards that work to bridge the gap where humans and dolphins could understand a signal that was being pressed and played. Now, just briefly, and then we'll stop after this, I think, we've been working with a group of scientists at the Georgia Institute of Technology, Thad Starner's computer group, to develop an underwater two-way computer system, just to see what we could play with the dolphins. And it's basically an interactive acoustic keyboard. What happens is the divers, you see here on the left, they wear the whole getup, and it's a video camera. It has a keyboard that has pre-programmed sounds. It has a speaker, has a hydrophone to gather sounds, and a speaker to play sounds and collect data and all that. And so we're in the water using this system. And the idea is that instead of learning the potential language of a species, maybe we can start developing a small mutual language, right? And we use the system that Irene Pepperberg uses, which is model rivalry, where you're showing the dolphins how the system works, not just expecting them to immediately understand what's going on, right? So you're using it in the water. If I want to ask for a toy from another researcher, I press the button, I ask for the sargassum or whatever toys in the water, and he or she will give it to me. The dolphins observe, they hear the whistle, that is the label for the toy. And if they mimic it, then we'll give it to them, and then we all get to play and everybody's happy. Now, just recently, we miniaturized the system now, thank God, because it was kind of a bear to wear. But we now have an armband that's the keyboard, underwater speaker, and then the thing that we wear on our chest now is actually a smartphone that now does the recognition that will tell us somebody asked for a scarf or recognize the whistle. So it's a pretty cool system, and it's been slow in the making, but the idea is that diver B makes a whistle that means sargassum, and diver A and B play with the sargassum, and then, oh yay, the dolphin mimics the whistle. The divers hear it in real-time recognition that someone has requested the sargassum, and then the dolphin gets to play with the sargassum and everybody's happy. Now, they've done a lot of mimicking of our signals, but some of the interesting things is that one of the things they first did was started putting their signature whistle. So on the left here is the computer sound, and the boxed area is, in this case, the signature whistle. And then there's another case here where there's computer signal here for sargassum, and the boxed area is the dolphin tagging on their old whistle in another frequency. So they're like experimenting with it, right? They're playing with it, trying to figure out, how do we get in on this, So it's been actually pretty interesting. Nobody's having conversations yet at all, but we're hoping we could also use this system if we ever really get some really good sequences of sound that we think we know what they mean, to test it out by playing it back to them and seeing. So it's a good underwater toy, and we continue to work with it.
It's
Fascinating.
so awesome.
Really, this is a true breakthrough.
We hope so.
And under circumstances like it's not trying to communicate with your dog.
No, that's
It's much more complicated.
Yeah, the trick for us is in the wild, it's about getting enough time with the same individuals to expose them to the system so that they finally get it. Like, oh, if I make that whistle, I get this toy, and if I make this whistle, I get that toy. And that's the challenge.
And that they trust you.
right.
Yes, and they're motivated to play with you. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, because I think they do, at least from our experience, they do recognize individual people.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
And we work really hard not to break up their behavior. Like if they're behaving, we don't use the system. We just let them do their thing, right? It's only when they're playing with us that we engage this protocol. So
that's very interesting.
Being
good
respectful.
little humans.
Yeah. All right, so should we jump into a few questions?
Yeah, sounds good.
Oh, you can stop sharing your screen so that we can all be big again.
Whoops. Whoops. Oop, did it wrong. Okay. Sorry. What happened here?
While you're working on it.
Lost you.
First question is from Anna. When bottlenose and spotted dolphins interact, is there evidence of interspecies communication? If so, does this communication look different or unique in any way?
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, of course, they're interacting, behaviorally, they're using some of the same signals, but oh, here we go. But yeah, we just don't know how, Whoop, am I unshared?
You're good.
Okay, sorry, I thought I was still on. Yeah, so they have the same kind of body shapes and structure, and we know they use kind of the same signals, but I had a graduate student who looked at that specifically, and even though they use the same signals, when the spotteds, who can be low on the totem pole, when the bottlenose are around, they use really overt signals, more and more intense signals to, get out of a situation. So yes, they have the same body signals, but they may use them differently when they're together. We don't know about the sounds. The question is, do they share sounds? The bottlenose have kind of some different sounds than the spotteds do, but when they're together, how does that work? Do they have some mutual signals they understand? There is some evidence from some other species now in Costa Rica, and then even looking at the orcas that have different dialects. And it looks like when two disparate groups, whether they're different species or different pods, they have mutual signals that they use when they're together. And then when they're not, they use their own signals. So that's possibly what's going on there.
All right.
Lots,
Camilla,
lots to learn.
I know. Camilla's asking, says that they're against captivity of dolphins in Mexico, and they just were curious about your opinion on this matter.
So I'm a firm believer in no capture. I think taking dolphins out of the wild and kidnapping them from their families is completely wrong. The reality is we have a lot of marine parks now. So, it's disconcerting that so many of them are just pure entertainment. I mean, a lot of them used to do good science work, not so much anymore, maybe. But then the question is, what do you do with the dolphins that are in captivity? If they're born in there or they've been in there for decades. There have been releases attempted. Some have been good attempts, others maybe not so good. But so there's a larger movement, and I'm part of it, for sanctuaries for retirement homes. So we do this for a lot of other species, right? Do it for great apes, we do it for giraffes, rhinos, you name it.
Yeah.
So giving them a dignified retirement is probably the best we can do. A lot of them probably are not releasable. But number one, we have to stop catching them. Some people think we should stop breeding them for that reason, because if you keep creating the product, you're gonna need places to put them, right? There are many that disagree with this. Yes, there's important scientific work that's been done for decades in these situations. But the question is, what are the ethics now that we know so much about these guys? Is
Right.
it okay to keep a smart, sentient creature in a small tank jumping through hoops? And, I think the answer is pretty clear to a lot of us. So there is resistance to this thought, and it's not a cheap endeavor. It's going to take a lot of money to have a whale sanctuary and a dolphin sanctuary, but there's a lot of money in the world. That's my opinion. So it's got to find it. And there are some really good, like, I'm involved in the Whale Sanctuary Project in Nova Scotia, and as an advisor, where they're trying to create a place for orcas and belugas. And they've done diligence, homework, checked out a site, gotten the community involved, and you've got to try it. I mean, you're not going to have the data to know how it went unless you try it either.
Yeah.
So to me, it's about giving them a retirement that's away from humans the way it has been. And people need to understand when they're going to these places in Mexico, do you know where those dolphins came? Do you know how, are they carted around? Are they caught in the wild? I mean, these are really, if you're going to be a tourist, you better think about these ethics if you're going to be
Yes.
involved.
Yeah.
But they've created this consumer of the dolphin, right? I have to do dolphin therapy. I have to be a dolphin trainer for a week. And, I mean, I love dolphins too, but you want them to be dolphins, right?
Yeah. It seems like it's better to kind of focus energy like that on rehabilitation of ones that are injured, or they've been entangled in a fish net, or they're all cut up, banged up, hit by a boat,
Right.
beast, something like that, where you can
Yes.
rehabilitate,
Tail story,
right, where you can,
Clearwater Aquarium.
but you can
The
rehabilitate
rescue dolphin.
an animal and then attempt to release it or move it to a sanctuary if it is too injured to
Right.
go back to the wild.
Look, now we know
Yes, exactly.
one thing 50 years ago, but to still be stuck in a time that has passed, it's just, why would you do that? It's, we didn't know a lot that we didn't know. The same is true with
Right, of course.
with birds, with fish, with cats, with dogs, with chimpanzees, until Jane Goodall
Right.
really changed the way we can look at ourselves by looking through the eyes of chimpanzees, or Craig Foster with the octopus. One man, one octopus, 1 year. Had a way of changing
the way we think.
Yeah, and now we know. So why would you go back now that we have this breakthrough?
All right, we're going to zip through a few more questions because we still have quite a few in the queue.
Popular topic.
I know. Okay, Emily is asking, over the years you've been observing these dolphins, what impact has commercial fishing had on their behavior and where they like to hang out? And what about ecotourism?
Yeah, so where we work in the Bahamas, they're pretty lucky that way. There's not a huge commercial fishing. There's conch fishing and lobster fishing. And the Bahamas actually was challenged with purse seine nets at one point, but they negated it. So that is not a huge issue for the dolphins. Ecotourism certainly has expanded a bit. Again, we're kind of lucky because the dolphins, at least in our original study site, live pretty far offshore. So you have to be a pretty big boat to get out there and stay. But we've had definitely years where there's way too many boats. So, it depends on the operators, and it depends on in our case, we tried to establish rules, but mostly we had voluntary rules, etiquette between boats about, getting too close or activity. And there's always the ones that disobey. But yeah, of course. But, ecotourism needs a limit also. You can't bombard species. You can't bombard the Grand Canyon. You can't, we just can't keep doing this. There's way too many people on the planet to keep, mucking around however we want. So permits, limited kind of access, and educated operators is really the key for that kind of stuff.
Quality experience both ways.
Yeah. All right. Bruce is asking, if dolphins don't have a sense of smell, how do they detect when a female is in estrus?
I think it's through taste. I see them tasting what I call tasting the water behind the female. So when a female urinates, they can have estradiol and various components. I've always wanted to have a little stick in the water that is like some test for that.
Little
'Cause, you know,
wand,
every summer we call them the hot females, right? They're like 2 or 3 females and everybody's after them. And God, they've got to be either sensing it through taste or perhaps sound. You know, maybe they're buzzing them and they can see reproductive activity,
high frequency,
you know,
something.
but yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the chemical, but it's taste, not smell.
It's chemoreception. Probably, I mean, living in a medium that is filled with messages. I mean, when you think taste and smell are both chemoreception, it's, yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Yep.
So we're technically at the top of the hour, but we'll try 2 more
It's-
questions and
okay.
then
You gotta
we
come
will
back to this.
we have Denise come back or we can take some of these questions separately by email.
No, she has to come back.
Yeah. Benita is asking, how long does a dolphin live? Are there different lifespans for different species?
Yes, there are different lifespans for different species. We do not know all of the lifespans for all the species. Bottlenose and our spotted dolphins looks like early 50s to 55, maybe. That seems to be the upper limit.
Very cool. Okay, let's see here. Some of these are too complicated for the time that we have left.
Uh-oh.
So I
John
think
Lilly question.
a John Lilly question. All right, we'll
Yeah.
take the John Lilly question. William is asking, in the
Uh-oh.
mind of a dolphin, he postulated the dolphins could possibly communicate by creating sound that would express the sonar images reflecting an acoustic experience. Could you comment on that?
Yeah, sure. Holograms, that sort of thing. So we do know, like bats, dolphins perceive from the reflected echo. Okay, it's called a highlight echo. And there's been a lot of great work on bats, and we know that bats, anytime their echolocation bounces off, they get a different waveform of the signal, and they learn this is the angle of this size of prey, that sort of thing. So dolphins do the same thing. There's been some really cool work in Hawaii years ago called the phantom echo experiment. And they basically recorded the echoes of the dolphins off of like objects. And then they played those echoes back and they fooled the dolphin. The dolphin thought the object was really there, but it wasn't. All they were getting were the echoes. So that's as far as we know, as far as acoustically. I don't know about the hologram theories. There's just not a lot of evidence for that, but they're, you know, they hear sound and they interpret it from a time differential of arrival to their ears, right? So those 2 things combined, I think is probably the best sense of how they're perceiving things now. Whether they can create a waveform that's the echo of a fish and send it to their calf, that would be a question to look at. I mean, if they're doing that, then they're actually kind of sending well, it's not an image, but it's an echo that represents, you know, a fish or whatever object.
All right. Gigi said we can take a couple more questions. Okay, we're gonna be swift though. All right, Marianne, how do you know that a dolphin doesn't use smell?
Because they don't have any olfactory tracts. They've lost that over through evolution. So they
Okay.
don't have any connecting points. Yep.
Diane is asking, where are their ears?
Ooh, their ears. So yeah, so they don't have these external guys, right? Oop, can't even see it with my hair. They don't have external ears. So they have a little pinhole actually kind of behind their eye. And the sound actually goes in through their jaw because they can't gather it like this. They gather it through their jaw, which has some fat in it, right? It travels to the inner ear, which is similar to ours. It has some specialties. And that's how they interpret it, actually. So they don't have external ears, but everything's a canal.
Have a little bone phone action. All right, last one. Jenny says, in the Azores, I think spotted dolphins are only observed during the summer months. So since dolphins around your study area are resident all year round, I'm wondering if pods or individuals of the species could be migratory as well, depending on the conditions.
You know, anything's possible. We know now from whales, they show up all sorts of places. The Azores, it's possible. I mean, they're in the Atlantic. It's kind of a coastal species. They tend to hug like the coast of Florida, the shallow waters of the Bahamas, but you never know. And that's why you do try to do cross matching with other researchers, is like if you happen to see a dolphin. Now in the Azores, from what I understand from people that send me pictures of them, they really don't have spots there.
Hmm.
They live in these deep volcanic waters, and spots seem to be developed in shallow water. So they would look more like bottlenose probably. But yeah, it's a good question. And they've certainly had sperm whale matches there from other places that have been surprises. So, it's a wild world out there.
It is, dolphinately.
I have one last question.
Uh-oh.
Bear with me. It's just, Denise, how are the dolphin populations doing? I know in some cases, dolphins have been seriously decimated because they get caught in nets, the tuna nets in the Pacific, for example, and maybe in the Atlantic as well. And the entanglement with fishing gear has really weighed heavily on marine mammals. Thousands, several 100,000 marine mammals are killed every year through entanglement, largely with discarded fishing gear. As a watcher over many decades now, what do you see in terms of the impact of us on them?
Well, yeah, of course, in early years, like the tuna industry, for example, millions of dolphins were killed, millions, like 90% of their whole population was gone, decimated, as the whales.
In the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, it's horrible. And now keeping in mind there's many species of dolphin. So it seems the more specialized you are for food, the more trouble you can be in, right? If you aren't willing to migrate or eat something different, like orcas, for example. Yeah, fishing gear is probably the number one problem still, and bycatch. You don't hear a lot about that in the general public, but yeah, they're pulled in with fish and, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, and the number, again, these are hard numbers to get. You don't even know what the baseline group is. But one thing to keep in mind, and there's more talk about it these days, is that as much as the big numbers matter, what's also going on there are cultures of dolphins and whales that are smaller groups within the larger population. And what happens now is you start wiping out cultures of sperm whales, cultures of, and you have to stop thinking about dolphins as a number.
No, I agree.
As individuals and cultures that whose knowledge will be lost forever, like human cultures have been lost, for various reasons. So not that you don't want to stop the big slaughter, but even like National Marine Fisheries and people who are trying to assess this stuff, they don't even often know what a stock is. What's a group, who's where.
There's a stock.
Yeah, exactly. So again, it's not about numbers. Well, it is about numbers, but there are a lot of losses numerically and culturally. And that's kind of the new challenge, is to, make another argument for being careful, because you're going to lose the diversity of the world culturally and biologically.
Absolutely.
On that happy note.
On that happy note, yes. But we'll have you back, and we'll get through the rest of the deck and talk about more dolphins. But we do have to go. We're way over the top of the hour, but that's all right. But before we go, I'd like to just say again, thank you so much, Denise, and thank you, Ocean Elders, and thank you everyone in the dive-in community for coming back and showing up and participating in these conversations. We're so grateful to you. And water connects us all. We will be back, unbelievably, we'll be back next week.
All right.
And until then, take care of the ocean.
As if your life depends on it, because
it does. Thanks so much, everyone. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.